Hi everybody, I'm Stuart Hamilton. I'm the Head of Libraries Development at the Local Government Management Agency in Ireland, and I'm going to walk you through in this presentation the national reading campaign that we carried out earlier this year called Ireland Reads. I'm going to give you a little bit of insight into what the campaign was about, how we went about things, who we got involved, and what happened in the end. So I think the first thing I want to point out in the presentation is the context in which the campaign took place. Back in February 2020, the public libraries in Ireland, which I kind of work with in a way to implement the National Public Library Strategy, were having a very positive moment. We had our very first National Library Open Day on Leap Day 2020. And that followed a very successful national communications campaign called Take a Closer Look, which was intended to get people to join the library and remind them or help them discover just how many amazing services we have available for them. So at the end of February, we were feeling pretty pleased with ourselves. We saw big increases in numbers as a result of this campaign. But yet, by March the 12th, much the same as many of you, no doubt, the doors of all of our libraries were closed due to COVID. So we went from feeling very positive about the outlook for the sector to being a little bit worried. Now, strangely, we actually had a very good pandemic here for public libraries in Ireland. We received a lot of support from our users. Here are some very happy users who have been receiving book deliveries from many of our delivery vans across Ireland. And we saw huge explosions in the use of our digital services, much as public libraries did all over Europe. We use BorrowBox, lots of people using BorrowBox for the first time, downloading ebooks and e-audiobooks. So actually, we ended up with a lot of people very interested in the public library system, and we're having a very high profile in the media. So actually, in October, when the government came knocking with a new campaign that they were organising around health and well-being, which was called Keep Well, we were approached as part of that campaign to see if we, Libraries Ireland, could organise something around reading that was going to help people maintain a focus on their mental health and well-being through the dark months. Now, remember, Ireland, like many countries in Europe, we were under lockdown a lot of last year, and particularly at the end of 2020 and the start of 2021, we were once again finding ourselves with the libraries closed and only digital services available. So the Keep Well campaign was designed to provide a number of activities for people to get involved with over these dark months, and we were asked what we could do. And we actually, we were told to do something quite quickly, and we had in our back pocket something we'd seen in Australia called Australia Reads, which was about getting people to, commit to reading during a specific period. So we decided to put our own sort of spin on this thing and came up with the concept of reading for pleasure to support people's mental health and a national reading day where people would pledge to set aside time to sit down and escape into a good book. The objectives of our campaign were really, as I said, to encourage reading as a positive activity during these dark times, to drive people to our Ireland Reads website, which I'm going to talk about in a moment, and to pledge to set aside time on a specific National Reading Day, get people to use BorrowBox, our other online reading services, but also get people to be aware of their local bookshop. So it's beyond libraries at this point, and to support businesses which we all use and needed some help during times when their doors were closed too, and really do everything we could as a result of this campaign to drive a conversation about reading, escapism, well-being, libraries, and get people to share their experiences of what they're finding out. Now, we wanted to reach as many people as possible, children, young adults, but we had a specific focus maybe on people who had fallen out of love with reading perhaps, or who were unable to make it a habit when they wanted to, people who used to have been big readers in the past perhaps, but you know, for whatever reason, they found it hard to find time to sit down with a book these days. And that could be adults, that could also be children. So we wanted to drive people and young adults to the wonder of reading. Now, there were a number of challenges for us, particularly that we had, you know, limited internal resources and manpower to make things work. We were already dealing with a service that needed a lot of help. We were given a very tight deadline for coming up with an idea and then implementing it. We didn't know if our buildings were going to be open at the time that we held the national event. And we were a bit concerned if we only had online resources to offer, you know, what sort of strain would they be under? In the end, we just set a date and we kind of planned for the worst. So we said February is going to be a month of reading, and we're going to have Ireland Reads Day on Thursday, February the 25th. Now, look, we were very lucky with this. We received some pretty significant funding as a result of this government campaign. We had a pot of money which we would use for the creative part, advertising, and also about a third, or well, about 150,000 euros for book stock or reading materials, effectively digital books in this context. We wanted, with all of that, to build a coalition to get this project working. We wanted to go beyond libraries. We didn't want to just talk to ourselves. You know, a big tent approach. We knew we had to be bilingual, English and Irish. We wanted very distinct branding and messaging. And we decided that we would open up all of this for people to use as they see fit, because with the short time frame, we needed everybody in our coalition to pick up the slack and work for the campaign, because we, Libraries Ireland, wouldn't be able to do everything ourselves. So open sourcing the collaterals and making them adaptable for our partners was going to be key. We were going to go all in on health and well-being through reading, and that was where our messaging was going to lie. And we would organise ourselves 3 national events as part of this, which would take place online, but we would be looking to our partners to be doing, you know, tens, hundreds of other events around the country during the campaign. Now, the coalition we assembled, as I said, was very broad. We looked at the reading ecosystem, so libraries, bookshops, publishers, authors, poets, journalists. We brought those into the tent. We developed ambassadors from, you know, particularly public profile figures from books and literature, yes, but also sports, from science, from the media. We had the private sector involved. We had advertising credits from the state broadcaster, which is RTE, but the private sector in the form of Facebook also helped us out with advertising credits. And we had government departments, including Department of Education, Department of Health, who were the main funder, and the Department of Rural and Community Development, who is the parent department for the public libraries. So we were using that coalition really to get our message out there. Now, we wanted something very distinct, and we were lucky enough to have a great creative partner to get that done. We worked with an organization called Ogilvy, with a company called Ogilvy, for our Take a Closer Look campaign. And through them, we worked with a designer, an artist called Tara O'Brien, on the concept of squeezing in a read. This enabled us to sort of link to that pledge where, look, you're a busy person. Can you find 25 minutes to sit down and read on the 25th of February? And squeezing in a read enabled Tara to think about this kind of contortion situation where people are squeezing into very tight spaces to read a book. They're kind of getting under the bed, get the flashlight under the covers maybe. And you're away, you're in your own small world, you're squeezing in a read. So we had our hashtag, and Tara began to build the creative around this. Now, the squeeze in a read thing enabled us to do these great kind of banners that could fit down the side of web pages or even in the middle of newspaper pages. And we could really work with the concept, and we were very, very sort of happy with what came up there. And, you know, we kind of brought it all together and began to trail the social media channels that we had with the advance notice of the 25th of February. But we really put it all together in a single kind of video collateral for the campaign. And this was the kind of centerpiece of everything. And I think if you haven't seen it already, I hope you really like this.
Squeeze in a read for Ireland Reads on Thursday, 25th of February.
So everything came together. We had the artwork, we had the video, and we put it together on our website, irelandreads.ie. And here we knew we needed to hit a number of marks to make this work. We needed to have the functionality that enabled people to pledge time, and also for us to contact them about what was going on with the campaign. And we needed to find a way to get people back into the habit of reading. We did that through our book recommendation engine. I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. But we also knew the website needed to host the resources so people could download them themselves and go and do with them what they will, all those collaterals. We wanted to be able to promote our events and take registration. We wanted to highlight our ambassadors and our partners. As I mentioned earlier, English and Irish dual language. And it needed to be obviously fully accessible. Now, with the pledge, we were able to allow people to sort of pledge up to 24 hours if they so wished, but really people were putting in pledges, up to an hour, 2 hours if they could, and we took their name and their email, and this enabled us to stay in touch with them during the campaign. And then with the book recommendation, this was a really fascinating piece and something we were very happy. We kind of built it with that couch to 5K approach in mind. I don't know if you're familiar with that. The idea is that you take very small steps all the way through to running a 5K. And with this, we enable people to put in the amount of time that they had to spare to read, and then to choose the sort of type of book they were interested in, the genre, whether it was detective stories, horror stories, romance, kind of self-identify their reading level. Were you a super expert? Were you a novice? Were you intermediate? And then they do a search, and then they get this recommendation. And then based on the amount of minutes that they entered, if you squeeze in a read 50 minutes a day, you can finish this book in approximately 19 days. And we crowdsourced 1,000 recommendations super quick from Ireland's library staff, who actually had a big role during the pandemic, doing more on recommending titles to their users, a lot more than perhaps they'd been doing when libraries were open. Almost a return to kind of classic librarianship. Well, if you liked this, you might like this, because people were putting together book parcels for the cocooners, or the doors were closed and people could come and do the contact and collect, but they wouldn't have time to browse the shelves. So working with the library staff to get the recommendations. So the book recommendation engine online was hugely popular, and it was a great hook to get the media and people interested in the campaign itself. So we also, as I mentioned, had the ambassadors. Now, a lot of these faces may not be familiar to this audience, but these are Irish people with public profile, people including the kind of literary laureates, journalists, scientists, poets, people who've done reading clubs. There's sports people in there, there's social media influencers, and all of these people basically were highlighted through the website, but also picked the ball up and committed to get the word out there about the campaign to their sort of general audiences. And that social media activation was absolutely crucial for the success of the Ireland Reads campaign, because we were able to ask our partners to do things for us, to pick things up. We had our libraries, we had our local authorities, and we gave them all of the materials. And between those sort of two approaches, we were able to get into all sorts of audiences for the campaign. And because we'd open sourced the collaterals, we strongly encourage people to kind of do their own user-generated content with the design that Tara and the team had come up with. So you can see here, on the left there, you can see partner logo can go into the social media splash, or on the right-hand side, you can add a quote. Now, the gentleman there is Michael D. Higgins, the President of Ireland. I'll talk a bit more about him in a moment. But you can see how this works, because we could give these collaterals to ambassadors, and off they go. You know, they're well branded. We've got the government logos, our own logos. We've got the Ireland Reads logo. People know what it is. It's all within the same sort of creative look and feel. And this was really, really helpful for us. So look, we were pretty much ready to go once the 25th came around. We were really hammering that message on our social media feeds and wherever we could about the ability that reading has to reduce stress, help you take it easy, help you escape. And by the day of the 25th, we were, in really good shape. Again, this is kind of Irish facing, obviously, but we managed to secure big launch features with the one of the major morning radio shows. We'd had features in the print media, in the sort of the run up to Ireland Reads Day. We had online media likewise. The day before, we did all of the PR, the photos. We were on one of the most popular radio shows. One of our county librarians did a great turn on the Ryan Tubridy show. And then on the day itself, we were on national news. We'd really done our homework. We'd done a lot of pre-planning. And one of the things which was wonderful was that we've been able to get the presidents of the country to do a video message prior to the launch. Michael D. Higgins is an extremely cultured man. He's a big supporter of literature, of libraries. And he did a fantastic message which enabled us to generate even more momentum. So we actually did a special for Michael. We had him squeezing in a read. He's got some very famous dogs, which are really quite well known in the country. So we did something special for President Higgins. And if you do get a chance to look at the video online, it's definitely worth it. It's a great message about the power of reading and libraries. And from there, it just kind of really spiraled as we hoped it would. The Taoiseach, effectively the Prime Minister of Ireland, Micheál Martin, he did his message. A lot of his politician colleagues from across all different parties did the same sort of thing. We had a lot of associations and groups use the hashtag for Squeeze in a Read for Ireland Reads. And people began to post pictures, as we'd hoped, of them reading themselves, perhaps in different contorted positions or in cute little spaces. This was obviously a big hit with kids, and people would also take videos of themselves in reading positions and talk about what they were reading. So that conversation began to spark using the social media hashtags, and it turned out to be, extremely significant on the day itself. And we did manage to run the online events during the day itself and the preceding days. We did one on the kind of the science behind reading and well-being with NALA, who are the National Adult Literacy Agency. The Laureate Nanogue did an Irish language event. The Laureate Nanogue is the Children's Laureate. And we did one, Libraries Ireland, we did one also with the Laureate for Fiction and a number of other people talking about how people's reading habits had been changing in lockdown and what people were reading. It was very, very interesting. We had 1,200 people attend those three events during the week and thousands more view them afterwards. But of course, they were supported at a local level by loads of stuff that the libraries themselves were doing, working with their local newspapers and their local media outlets to really promote things at local levels. So, I mean, frankly, the whole thing was a tremendous success for us. It was a very good news story in still the winter time, but with spring on the horizon. But a good news story that was being sort of shared at the highest level of politics in the media, and people really picked it up. We were trending across all social media during the day, and then when it comes to sort of the figures, as the slide shows there, we hit some pretty impressive numbers on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. But more particularly, we had nearly 900, or nearly 1 million actually by the time we got to the end, minutes pledged on the website to set aside for reading on the day. 10,000 people signed up and took the pledge via the website. We know that it was significantly more because, if we did this again, we'd, for example, one school class was counting as one person. So we would have had many more multiples. And we had, 50,000 people use the website and the recommendation machine in the 3 weeks that it was up there. And we saw significant kind of uptake of the Borrow Box service. During Ireland Reads Week, 30% increase in new users, but during February year on year, a 56% increase in new users. So, the numbers don't lie in this case. This was a campaign that basically had real significant national visibility and impact. And in fact, it looks like we're going to be doing it again next year and turning it into an annual occurrence, which would be the 3rd year in a row that we would do an event around public libraries nationally at the end of February. And we learned from this experience just how important that big, broad church, that coalition was. We learned that involving the target groups that we want to reach, for example, through the National Adult Literacy Agency, is crucial. We're going to be very happy to have a bit more time to prepare next time out and to have those good ideas. But we think we can do a lot more with that time. And there's a lot of things we can do with something like the book recommendation engine, for example, to build on that as a new national service. And of course, next time, we're actually going to be open. At least we hope we are. So, the impact we could have with library buildings open is going to be hopefully even more multiplied. So look, that's the Ireland Reads campaign in a nutshell. It's about 20 odd minutes walking you through what happened. I'm going to be very happy to take questions. And I hope you've enjoyed hearing about what for us was an extremely bright spot in some pretty tough months during the sort of dark and wet Irish winter. So thank you very much.